Grab your favorite mug and drink of your choice. Today I chose some tea because today we're going to be doing some spreadsheet work. One of the first steps when it comes to analyzing the energy of your building is doing some benchmarking, is comparing your building usage to the average, whether that be building type or location or amount of people, whatever it is you're benchmarking against, to the average to see how you compare. Are you high? Are you low? Are you right near average? It's a great starting point to see how much energy you're using. So today we are going to go through somewhat of a tutorial of the benchmarking workbook that you can download off Itty Better's website. We're going to be using some real data from my house, so you can take a look and see how to use it. Alright, so when you first download the workbook, it's going to be empty. So let's just take a look at the first tab here, which is instructions. And let's just get familiar with the tabs here and what tools and options are at your disposal when you get started with the workbook. So first things first is the type of tabs, and they are color coded so you can at a glance get an idea of what each of the tabs are. So the first few tabs are gray color, and these are customer facing tabs. So once you're done putting in all of the data, if you have clients that you want to print out a report, you can do so. And these tabs are already formatted, that will populate once we input the data. So you can just print these out and give them to a customer. So you have your customer name and general information up here. We'll select this later, what type of building it is, some about the data, like what date ranges are you taking a look at for the data, the general overview utility information, your carbon dioxide equivalent information, and just some simple graphs to give you an overview, a summary of the data. The next tab can be inputted by you or your client. This is going to be some information about the client themselves and about the information that you're collecting, and about the building. So utility information, electricity, water, gas, any renewables, and then account numbers and meter numbers, the type of equipment they have on site, operational information, number of people in the building, how often they're in the building, and then a spot to put any additional information you have. The next tab isn't included in the customer facing tabs, but it is also gray, which is a checklist. So if you're doing an on-site audit, this is a great tool to have to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Goes through utility information, and you can also on the side here open and close these sections. So it goes through utility information, lighting, HVAC, water, kitchen, transformers, and lots of other information. And for HVAC, you can expand all of these sections. So typically the customer doesn't input all of this information, which is why it isn't under customer facing tabs. All right, so the next set of tabs are what you're going to be using for inputting the data into the workbook. So we have everything from natural gas, which is typically in monthly format. Same thing with water over here, just consumption and cost. Here we have it in CCF, which is hundreds of cubic feet of water. Then we're going to have several electricity tabs and then several solar tabs, depending on the type of format and interval that your data is coming in. So each one, so basic is in a monthly format for your electricity data. Electricity peak has the option to input your usage based on a TOU rate. So you have on, mid, off, and super peaks. Then we have 15-minute interval data and 60 or hourly minute data. And then similarly, we have your solar data in monthly 15-minute and 60-minute intervals. The last two tabs are really not for usage. You really shouldn't touch these, but they're here for you to take a look at. They're just for references for those drop downs. This is where it's pulling some of that data. So these are some general references for the drop downs. And then CBEC is a website. Here, let me pull that up real quick. CBEC data comes from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. I know these are mouthful acronyms. And then CBEC stands for Commercial Buildings Energy Consumption Survey. So this is what this benchmark workbook is benchmarking against. So you know the information is just not pulled out of thin air. And you can see here that this was pulled from the website. It was released in September 2022, but the data does come from 2018 because that's when the last time that they fulfilled it. So as of today, 2023, this is still the most up-to-date data that is available. All right, so taking a look at the instructions tab again, so we can see those tabs now. Customer-facing tabs are gray. The tabs that you're going to be putting your data information here are the colorful ones, and then the dark gray, there's nothing to change in those. So we recommend that you start with the input building tab and then move on to the data tabs for the utility information, and then finally go to the select tab. And once you do that, everything else in the summary tab should populate. Okay, so let's start off with the building tab. So let's make up a customer here. So maybe we have Joe Schmo, project number, I don't know, 0542. And customer name is Joe Schmo. He is the facility manager of this very small building. And we have Joe Schmo at 123.com. And you can input all this information. So this is actually going to be utility data from my home. And we're located in California. So we can just input that here. The square footage of this building is only about 1,000 square feet, so pretty small. And it was built in 1953. And you could continue to fill all this information here. But one important piece is making sure that you put in the square footage of your building, because the workbook also benchmarks create some benchmarking values based on the square footage of the facility. So if you don't put anything in, at least put in the square footage or approximate value. So once you do that, now we can begin inputting some data. So let's go collect some of that data. All right, so this is information that I downloaded. I went into my account for my electricity data, and this is what it looks like. And it's really not that great to work with. See, it's like broken out. So even if I do create a table out of this information, like it's still gonna be kind of awkward to work with. And then if we take a look at the spreadsheet, that's not the format that we need this data to be in. So my data, if you take a look at it, is in an hourly format. So every hour it takes a measurement. So we have 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And this is the format that we need it in. So we have the dates and times here, the dates going vertically, and then the times going horizontal. So if you could use some tips on how to quickly clean up your data, then stay with me here. If not, if you know how to do this already and you can do that quickly, you can just skip along to the next part. But if you could use some tips, this is how I would do it. So first, we don't need all of this information up here. So I would just select this, right click, select delete. And then another issue that we have is if you scroll down, it's separated by days here, but we don't want that. We want everything in one vertical column. So this would get in the way for us. So what I would do is I would select all of the data. Well, actually, we don't need this column either. See this reading quality, all of this is all blank. So let's also delete this column. Okay, great. So now what I would do is I would scroll all the way to the bottom and select all of the data, go up top, select insert and table. And yes, my table has headers, so we'll keep that. Okay. All right, now that makes it super easy to then click up here and sort. Now, although these are numbers, I can still select sort from A to Z. Awesome, so now if we head to the bottom, we'll see that all of these extra headers and blank spaces have all been sorted right to the bottom, because when you sort from A to Z, it does the numbers first, which is great. So now you find where the last bit of your data is, where that meets all the things that you don't want, and I would just select all of the rest of these rows down to the very bottom of the table. I would select all of the rows, right click, delete. Awesome. Now we only have data. But the next problem that we have is the dates. We have start date and time and end date and time are still in one column. So we can still fix that. So how I would do that is I would need to add in some columns here. So you can actually like select a few columns, hit right click, insert. And what we are going to do is use the delimited function. So if we go up top at data, select text to columns, we see this delimited option. And so what this does, you can read it here, characters such as commas or tabs that separate each field will be able to separate the data into separate columns. without having to do that manually. So if you click next, we can see from our data that it's separated by spaces. So just click space. We want to treat consecutive delimiters as one. So if there's like multiple spaces, we don't need separate columns for that spaces. And this gives you a little bit of preview, and this looks almost exactly what we want. So let's click finish. So now we have this 2 here, so we can simply select this column, go to find and replace. And we want to find, there's actually a space there too. So let's see if we could hit space and then TO, and we want to replace this with nothing. All I did was go into the cell, select what I wanted to delete, which was the space TO, hit copy, clicked out of it, and then go back to find, paste it in here, replace nothing, and then replace all. Fantastic. Okay, great. So now we could also, we want to make sure that the format of the cells are correct as well. So we want columns A and C to be dates. See up here it says general, but we could select short date. Awesome. And then consumption, or this column and this column to be time. Awesome. Okay, great. And let's label these accordingly. Start date, start time, end date, end time. And now these 2 columns are extra. We can delete these. And this, so this title was given to us by it was just in the spreadsheet, so when I downloaded it, and so it's telling us that the units for the data are in kilowatt hours, so we can just replace that with kilowatt hours. Awesome, that looks a lot better than what we had before, and I'm going to save that. And now what I want, so now the data looks a lot cleaner, but it's still not in the right format. So what we can use to simplify changing the format of this data is if we select it all and then click insert and pivot table. Let's put the pivot table on a new worksheet. Click OK. And now we have some different options to format the data. So let's use the start date and time as the dates and times that we're going to use for the spreadsheet. So you notice when I clicked on date, it automatically generated year, quarters, and months for us, but we don't need all of that for our spreadsheet. So I'm going to unclick those. Then we want date to be in rows, and then time is in columns. Great. And then just select KWH, and it automatically puts it in values for us. Fantastic. So that was super easy, and now it's in the format that we need for the spreadsheet. So now what I'm going to do is just copy the data over to the spreadsheet, and I want to make sure that I select the right data. So I only want up to 11 p.m. I don't need the total values over here. And then again, when I scroll down, I don't need the totals at the bottom. When I paste, I'm just going to right click and special paste values. This one here, to make sure I don't take anything else with me. And then I'm also going to do the same thing with the dates. Our units are in kWh. And we'll drag that all the way down. Awesome. And we also want to input the start and end dates of the data that we want to use. So I only collected the data that I want to use, and so this goes, it's exactly 1 year. So it goes from October 1st, 2022, all the way to September 30th, 2023. So I'm just going to say that in the spreadsheet here. But if you did collect more data, then you can just adjust the dates accordingly up here. Awesome. Okay, and then if we scroll all the way over here, we can see that the spreadsheet already organized the data into a monthly format for us. And we also, since the usage data doesn't have cost, we have to input that manually, but I did prepare that ahead of time. So if we go here, I have billing amount. Okay, so we'll notice real quickly that the date in the spreadsheet goes from October 1st, 2022 to 2023, and this is reversed. So again, I would kind of just do the same thing, input a table, and then just sort the data. So perfect. Now I can simply copy and paste it over. And I don't need the last month, I'm only going to September. And again, just special paste. Awesome. Looks like formatting got a little messed up, so we'll change all of that to accounting so we have those dollars. There we go. Okay, so we have electricity data. Let's put in some natural gas data. So I want to keep the dates the same again. So I really want to do from October 1st, 2022. So we're looking at energy from the same time frame for every single utility. And again, the same thing with this table, so let's reformat it. If this happens where you have these little green dots or green triangles in the corner, here's a quick fix for that. You can use that same delimiter function, text to columns, or actually, hold on, let me see if I can remember this. I think I put in like 1, and then yeah. So a quick way to fix that. So what's happening is, like, for some reason when sometimes if you convert a spreadsheet from CSV to Excel, it's not recognizing what's in the cell, like if it's a number, text, or something else. So a quick way to fix that is if you put in some other random cell, just 1, copy it, select all the data that you're trying to change, right click, special paste, and then multiply. We're gonna be multiplying all of these numbers by 1, so they shouldn't change. Click OK. And there we go. Now it's numbers in all of them, so we just have to change these to dates. Awesome. We have bill days, usage, average therms per day, charges. So these should be numbers. Dollars. And now we can sort this. Oldest to newest. Fantastic. So now we're looking from October again to September. So we can take these dates, copy them over. Therms. And dollars. Whoops. Okay, awesome. Let's do water. So this will be similar to gas. I'm gonna create a table and then sort it. And actually, you'll notice for my water data that it doesn't actually take readings every month. It's every other month. But that's all right. So the water data is a little bit short. We don't have quite 12 months, but that's okay. We're not really, let's say we're not analyzing water for this project. And then we even have solar data as well. So let's input that. For the solar data, we actually have watts, but for our spreadsheet, we want kilowatts, so that's a simple conversion. Just divide by 1,000. And again, we're going to do a similar conversion as we did with the electricity data, just to get it in the same format. Actually, we need to do a little bit of adjustment for this data. So awesome. And now when you take a look at the solar data in this format, you can see you're probably going to have a lot of zeros in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, because this is reflects when the sun's out. Again, the solar data is in hourly format, so we're going to make sure we select the right tab. Alright, so after you've input all of your data into the data tabs, natural gas, water, electricity, solar, then you need to go to the select tab before the summary tab. And what the select tab does is basically you are selecting, making sure you are selecting the right days from the data that you just input into the spreadsheet. So when you go over to the select tab, you'll first take a look over on the upper left hand side and the screen strip right here, which is just suggesting to select the little plus button, which opens up a side panel on how to use this tab. And basically all this is telling you is that you need to update the pivot tables that have already been pre-made, that are referencing the right data for the tabs. But before you do that, first notice the yellow tabs once again for what you need to input, and select the tabs, the right tabs for the data that you input. So for electricity data, did you input monthly, 15-minute? We used hourly, and then the peak is the time of use. So make sure we have hourly for electricity and solar. Then when referencing the instructions, select any of the pivot tables. And once you do that, you'll notice that at the top, you'll see Pivot Table Analyze pop up. Select that, hit the drop down of Refresh, and select Refresh All. So now all of the pivot tables should be updated with the data that you already input. If you need to, you can go over to the drop down for the dates. And if you inputted more dates than you need, more than 12 months worth of data, then you can select them here. And just make sure you update, although it might update automatically. So then the rest should populate, but I would suggest just scrolling along, making sure that you have 12 months selected here. If you need to, you can adjust the tables to either add more or less months. But you'll notice here for the water data that you input, you might have caught me saying that it doesn't, my water bills aren't every month, it's every other month. But that's a little fix that we need to do for our water data. So the way for this table to reference the data is if it's consecutive months. So we just need to add some months into this data. And for the months that I input, I'm just going to leave those blank as far as the consumption and cost. We don't want to add imaginary consumption and cost to our data. But now our table should populate accordingly. Awesome. So now that table automatically updated, and if you notice too, we don't have the last month, but that's all right. And then this last table all the way over to the right is combining our energy data, our electricity, gas, and solar data to come up with the total consumption, production, pounds of CO2 equivalent, and total energy costs and total utility costs. So total utility costs also includes water. And then for reference, these are the conversions that the table is using. This table is our benchmarking table, and so this is kind of a very high level overview of all of the data that you input. So it's taking a look at your electricity data, solar, gas, everything, and then also taking a look at some benchmarking values. So like I said before, for the input building tab, make sure you input the square footage of your building. And so this is the table that's pulling that value from, and then taking your energy usage and just comparing it per square foot. So if all of this looks good, finally we can go over to the summary tab and take a look at our data. So though Joe Schmo might be looking at an office, this is really, I guess you can say, lodging. So this is really for commercial buildings. My home is not really a commercial building, but lodging is probably the closest to it. And it's pretty low, which is great. Awesome. So we have overall summary here, and then and just some graphs to take a look at for our consumption and production. I don't actually have solar panels on my home yet, so I did pull this from PV Watts just so we can take a look at what that might look like. And then total energy and utility costs month over month, electricity, solar, natural gas, and water. And you'll notice here, actually this is pretty interesting. So you'll notice that there was a huge spike in my water usage, and this is because we had a leak in our backyard that we didn't know about, but that's all fixed now. So I hope you find this spreadsheet useful. We do have a paid and free version for this spreadsheet. And if you have any questions, leave them down below. I would love to answer your questions. And also, if you have any recommendations on things that you would like to see improved in the spreadsheet, or if you find any mistakes, I'm sorry, that does happen sometimes, but please let us know and we will get that fixed as soon as possible. And anything else. Until next time.